So Star Wars is coming out with a new book and comic series called The High Republic, and someone is definitely high when they thought of this idea. Before we begin, guys, make sure to drop a like on this video and share it around. This is probably the 7th video in a row that's gonna be demonetized as soon as I upload it, which is probably a record for now. As always, I'll pin the top comment with the link to the video status if it's monetized or demonetized. It's not about the money, obviously, because with the amount of views that I get now, I'll probably get $1 for this video, but it's about the promotion. YouTube won't promote this video if it's demonetized, meaning it will probably suppress it as well from reaching your subscription box, even if you turn on the notification bell. So that's why I'm talking about the demonetization. So in order to combat that, you need to like it and share it. If you like it, once it goes back to the green icon, which makes it monetized the day after, it will probably hit the algorithm and get some promotion, even though it's too late for a news video. And if you share it, you promote it organically without the need of the YouTube algorithm. So it doesn't matter. For those of you that don't know, my previous video actually got removed about female on male violence. So it's not surprising so it's not surprising that they're demonetizing me now. So if you want to support this channel beyond this demonetization and the fact that they won't promote these videos, you can support me on Patreon and Subscribestar, whichever amount you prefer. I'm good with it. It helps me a ton. I really appreciate the recent support you guys have been showing towards this channel. This will definitely translate into me making more frequent content. Now, sorry for the shilling for 2 minutes long right now. Let's talk about Star Wars: The High Republic. Now, before we begin, let me tell you something, that I'm probably just like the shitty gaming journals with the blue check mark. I don't consume this media. I've never watched Star Wars. I've never played a Star Wars game, never read a comic, never read a book, but I will never miss a chance to shit on this series because of what it had become. Now, for those of you that don't know, Star Wars was probably the biggest thing in pop culture that was synonymous with geek culture before the series reboot. Now, since the reboot which was like, it was in 2014, 15, I can't recall, but it's in recent times, and obviously when you make a movie in this day and age, it has to be woke, it has to be diverse, which I have no problem with it. Inherently, it's not that bad. But when you focus on that as your first priority, that would make for a horrible entertainment experience. And that's what most of Star Wars fans said when they encountered the new saga, which did horribly compared to to what Star Wars is in pop culture. It was assumed to be the biggest cash cow in entertainment, and the cat outside that's fighting agree with me. I thought it was going to be a pure cash machine, no matter how bad they would make those movies, but they actually managed to do them so bad that even the core fandom left them. Obviously, they picked up some new young fans who never knew about Star Wars, but overall, the new saga was a pretty huge minus on the bottom line. Obviously, The Mandalorian did pretty well. The newest game, I forgot its name. It's something with The Last Jedi. It was actually pretty decent looking from what I've seen from the trailers and playthroughs. It actually looks like a fun quality game, and the cat agrees with me again. So yeah, obviously I didn't consume any of this media, but I love shitting on woke capitalism, which is exactly what Star Wars is. And if by that point, 4 minutes into the video, you ask yourself, what does Star Wars has to do with SJWs other than the previous series? This one does as well. Now, if you watch this trailer and skip to the 1 minute 22 mark, I'm not gonna watch it obviously because of copyright issues. You'll see where they announce it. There's a board which is in terrible quality right now, but I have found a screenshot. Okay, this is decent quality. We'll go to the screenshot anyway. As you can see in their board, Authenticity lived in, authentically lived in, surprising, actual ending, feelings, relatable characters, sweeping slash epic, which is great, and diversity. Star Wars, not pro war. You can see if it's droids, scope, mythic, space and lightsaber battles. If you go further to the right, you see representation and diversity twice. Twice. Now I don't see anything in here that stated twice, and obviously, if you see it twice on the board, it's pretty important to them, and it's gonna be something that they focus on, which is a bad sign. Definitely a harbinger of doom of sort, if you want to say so, because movies that focused on those two aspects usually lose out on the other aspects which they wrote down, which hopefully for them they'll focus on. If you ask me if I think they'll go woke and go broke, I don't think so. I definitely think they killed that cash cow that is Star Wars, but they won't go broke because this is a books and a comic series that they can publish relatively very cheap if they do it online in ebook form, and even if they print it. So even if it goes real bad, it's way cheaper than making the movies. And if we read the article, you'll know why. So let's read the article and you'll understand why they're going this way, which is due to their SJW movies before. Not SJW movies, but rather the SJW band that were a huge part of the previous movies, like Rey being basically a Mary Sue. Even though I didn't watch the movie, I saw a ton of reviews about it, so I know some general info about the movie series. But Rey is basically a Mary Sue. You had the Admiral Gender Studies, which was funny as hell, shitting on the old Star Wars, where Luke threw his lightsaber, died, then didn't die. It was his reflection. Anyway, let's read the story and you'll get the entire picture. Disney has announced a new publishing initiative for its Star Wars Expanded Universe, titled Star Wars The High Republic. Designed as an interconnected series of books, novels, and comics, the series will be set about 200 years before Star Wars The Phantom Menace, in a quote golden age for the Jedi. As the company's press release notes, these periods on the Star Wars timeline will not overlap any of the filmed features or series currently planned for production, meaning that the High Republic will be limited largely to print stories for now, not the next big budget Star Wars movie or Disney Plus show. Still, if the stories do well and resonate with fans, there's no reason to assume that the High Republic era won't make the jump to the film at some point down the line. We don't need to read the entire paragraph to understand it. Basically, those books are a cheap way for them to test out those quote-unquote diverse stories with representation without losing a ton of money in the box office, but rather testing out the story, seeing if it does well in the book form, and later they could translate it into a movie, which could also fail. Even if the books do really well, they can always bring a really bad director to interpret the books in an even more SJW Mary Sue way than the previous saga, and make it even worse. So this is basically them testing out the waters with books and comics, which are relatively cheap to make, as far as I know. If you compare them to movie, then it's definitely way cheaper to test out different storylines in this universe, which was previously a cash cow, and this is what they're aiming to go back to get it back on the making them a ton of money. This was basically why they made the Mandalorian for the Baby Yoda toys, because Star Wars toys are probably the biggest money making in this franchise right now. Honestly, I don't care if it does well or not. I'm just reporting on it for those of you that like Star Wars and follow it, or like shitting on Star Wars. I'm on the latter side of the story, because anytime a franchise goes for this woke capitalism shit, I'm gonna go shit on them. I don't care if I watch their content or not. I'm not being faux outraged. I'm telling you straight ahead, I don't consume this content. I know it's probably gonna end badly because of their focuses on diversity and representation. That's why the Game of Thrones prequels got cancelled right away. Sadly, I don't have an article up for it, but most places don't like it anymore. They're not looking for this woke capitalism shit. Like HBO cancelled the Game of Thrones sequels, which would have been a ton of money to be made on their end. People love Game of Thrones because of the book universe, even though the last season was totally shit. I could make a 20 minutes long video rant that's gonna be a 1 part of 10-part series about how bad the last season of Game of Thrones is, but the book material is great. There's a ton to go off to make the prequels really good and really interesting, but from what I've heard and read, the first pilot that they submitted, which was led by a woman writer and a woman director who basically tried to make it a diversity Mary Sue story that was gonna be super preachy. They HBO threw it right away. They didn't care about the money that they spent about it because honestly, HBO know what good TV is. They have most of the best shows, even the ones that are kind of SJW-ish like Billions are rather enjoyable because of quality writing and acting. So yeah, it's not gonna work anymore. Maybe they can do it in book forms because they're easier, they're less of a risk, and that's what basically this movie is, just trying out storylines in books and comics which are cheap to make, and then they can later on interpret them into movies if they become successful, which is basically the entire Marvel universe and DC. This is not as successful as Marvel, but you catch my drift. So that's basically what they're trying to do with Star Wars. Build a backstory, get some more lore to work off from, go into the comics market as well, and then turning those successful comics into successful movies, hopefully for them. So yeah, I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments. And as I get this message, I'll leave you to it. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to share this video and drop a like. If you want to support this channel, you can support it on Patreon and Subscribestar, whichever you prefer. It helps a ton for me to make you content and more frequently. Thank you for all the support, for all the new Patreons. And the neighbors making noise is my cue to leave. See you next time. Peace.